Whenever there's an opportunity to obey God in both a practical and powerful way, you can be rest assured that many times it's going to be countercultural and counterintuitive. Not only that, but if we actually believe that God is leading us to do these things, it will extend our faith as we trust in Him. If this does not describe every decision we will ever make as Christians, it at least describes the vast majority of them. And the reason that our decisions, or this particular one that I will speak of today, is both countercultural and counterintuitive is because the kingdom of God is the exact opposite of the kingdoms of this world. Simply put, God's way is very different than our way if it is not led by God. This is why it takes faith to believe the kingdom truth, such as the first shall be last, or to gain your life, you must first lose it. That's paradoxical. That's upside down. That is counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense. And at the same time, the wisdom of God is far surpassing that of our finite minds. So for us to be unable to grasp every transcendent direction that God gives us is not surprising. It's not surprising that I don't comprehend or understand everything that God might lead me to do in this life. So, as you might have skillfully deduced, I'm setting up a countercultural, counterintuitive choice that you're going to have the opportunity to make this weekend as a part of In Focus Church. It's both practical and powerful. Every year during this time, we have historically taken up an annual Christmas offering, in essence, that we call our annual Reach offering. It's strategically placed at this point in the year so that God can do something in our hearts as His children. It's something that we do that goes beyond our normal tithe. It goes beyond our normal giving so that we can extend the reach of God's love into our community and into the world and do some things that we would not typically be able to do. In a strategic sense, this is a scheduled time that we do this offering where consumerism dominates our thoughts, it dominates our actions, it dominates our minds and our money in essence. So to face that temptation, we take an offering like this to look at this temptation right in the eye and say, instead of giving in to the cultural norm, I'm going to pursue kingdom generosity. I really have never been more excited to see what God is going to do than in this year's version of our annual Reach offering. The rearview mirror of 2020 says this is not very intelligent to do an offering right now. This doesn't make a lot of practical sense, but God says He can make a way where there seems to be no way. In our human understanding, God is able to do what we cannot comprehend. So I would ask that you would prepare, and I mean really prepare. Prepare with listening to God's voice and praying specifically and directly to God and saying, God, what would you have me to do to make a sacrifice, to trust you more than I trust my own self to provide. Allow this annual time of giving and worship to bring down any idols of materialism that you might have in your life, while at the same time allowing God to use you to bless other people. It's amazing to be able to be a vehicle or a vessel of blessing to others, and yet that's what we have the privilege of being able to do. Now, quick change of gears, but I want to follow up with this past Sunday's message as well. So bear with me. I've said it before, but I will say it again. God speaks to us through His Word and through the local body of believers, the church that we are a part of. In His perfect timing, He uses that place in those leaders to speak into our lives. In other words, the messages that I teach from Sunday to Sunday to the people of In Focus Church are not taught or preached in a vacuum. They're not to be forgotten with no application. Sometimes the application for us may be well down the road, and God will bring to our remembrance something that we learned in a message through His Word on a given Sunday. But other times, and I think more times often than not, we get to apply it fairly quickly, like immediately. Much like Jesus did with Peter when He was speaking to Peter about his upcoming crucifixion, in essence. And Peter jumped in and said, I'm never going to betray you. We would never leave you. We would never do anything like that. And Jesus basically takes the opportunity to teach him, to speak to him and say, listen, Peter, before the rooster crows 3 times, you will deny that you know me. You will betray me. Peter hears this message, much like we hear a message on Sunday, and he goes off thinking, that's ridiculous. I would never do that. He doesn't apply and meditate upon what Jesus actually said to him. And sure enough, before the end of that night, before the dawn of the next day, Peter ends up denying Jesus 3 times. He had an immediate opportunity to put into practice what Jesus had tried to tell him was going to take place, tried to teach him. My message about peacemakers this past Sunday wasn't just an encouraging word to ponder, but a convicting word to apply. And as usually the case with a loving God, it was given at a very specific time with his foreknowledge, knowing that this Sunday would be a day that we as his church needed to hear that so that we would all face Monday with the application of this word in our lives. Now, I don't know how this may have confronted you. I don't know how this may have affected you. I don't know what you've had to deal with this week or what you may have to deal with the rest of this week and into this weekend. But I do know this. If I'm your pastor and this is your church, the word from this past Sunday was for all of us to put into practice as believers with a test, pop quiz, that's coming very quickly. I would venture to say we rarely get past peacekeeping because peacekeeping benefits us and doesn't take any work. We rarely get to peacemaking because that takes hard, labor-intensive, emotionally taxing, spiritually refining work, and all too often we're not prepared for the lifelong battle of purity and peace, or even purity at the sake of peace. So let me close by reading from James 1, verse 23. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. Let's not forget what we've learned about being generous when this Sunday rolls around. And let's not forget about what God taught us when it comes to being peacemakers when the next opportunity to be a peacekeeper comes around. Let's all be doers who act.